The final section of chapter 5 is about the Hellenistic world, which basically centered in Alexandria, Egypt. And it was kind of a blending of all the different regions that Alexander had conquered. Hellenistic, by definition, is a cultural blend of Greek and other groups and cultures such as Egyptian, Persian, and Indian influences. Throughout this Hellenistic world, this Hellenistic region, there was a popular language that was spoken called Koine, and it became popular along the Hellenistic lands. This allowed for trade and communication to happen between and among all of the different groups. Capital letter B talks about trade and cultural diversity. The city of Alexandria was located in Egypt. It was founded by Alexander, and it eventually became the foremost center of commerce in the Hellenistic civilization. It was a strategic site located on the mouth of the Nile Delta. It had a diverse population which exceeded over 1/2 people. So in the BC era and therefore, that's a pretty big deal. Capital C talks about the attractions that were found at the city of Alexandria. One of the main ones, overlooking the harbor there, was an elaborate stone lighthouse that stood over 350 feet in height. It was called the Pharos and is considered one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. The greatest attractions, though, inside of Alexandria were the museum and the library. The museum there contained art galleries, a zoo, and even a botanical garden. The library had over 500,000 papyrus scrolls in its collection, including many of the ancient masterpieces of literature. It was known as the world's first true research library, and many scholars from throughout Greece and other parts of the world came to Alexandria to study. I do have a slide, a picture of what the lighthouse may have looked like. That's actually the Colossus. We'll learn about that in a moment, but the lighthouse most likely looked something like this. At the very top, there was an open chamber where they would burn a large fire, which would then project light out over the water where ships could see that this was an inlet in a harbor. You can see that it was built out of stone, and there was some type of a massive defense wall around it, is basically how it is written. Now, due to earthquakes, it did crumble. Then this is a picture of what remains in Alexandria of the library. Now, it did catch fire, and a lot of the wooden structure portion of it did burn down, but this is what's still left. So pretty magnificent structure located there in Alexandria, Egypt. Okay, next we'll switch our focus into science and technology. Talking about astronomy first, the library did contain a small observatory where astronomers could study the planets and stars. Talk about a few of these astronomers. Aristarchus came up with 2 scientific conclusions. First, the sun was larger than the Earth, and that the Earth and other planets revolved around the sun, which was very monumental for this time period. Okay, most people thought it was the other way around. They believed in the geocentric theory, but Aristarchus is putting out the heliocentric theory. The Roman Egyptian astronomer Ptolemy actually said that the Earth was the center of the universe later than this period. Eratosthenes was the director of the Alexandrian library. He tried to calculate the size of the Earth, and he was only about 5,000 miles off on the measure of the circumference. He estimated it at 28 to 29,000 miles, and in actuality, it's about 25,000 miles in circumference. Math and physics also were studied at Alexandria. Euclid is probably the most highly regarded mathematician who taught in Alexandria. His work still forms the basis for courses in geometry today. In fact, just a few days ago, I asked some of my AP students when we were covering this section to look in their geometry book to see if it mentions anything about Euclid. And there are multiple pages about Euclid and Euclidean geometry in our textbooks even today. Another key physician is Archimedes. Archimedes was from Syracuse, Sicily. He studied at the ancient city of Alexandria, and he accurately estimated the number of pi, which is the ratio of circumference of a circle to its diameter. He also invented many things, but one of them was a pulley system to move heavy objects. Roman numeral 3 will entertain philosophy and art. two major philosophies emerged in the 3rd century BC about how people should live their lives. One was called Stoicism. People who practiced Stoicism were called Stoics, and they proposed that people should live virtuous lives in harmony with the will of God or the natural laws that God established to run the universe. They believed that human desires, power, and wealth were dangerous distractions that should be kept in check. So when you're thinking about Stoics, kind of never get too emotionally high, too emotionally low, kind of keep an even keel. A stoic expression would be an expression that doesn't really let you know what the person's feeling. Epicureanism, on the other hand, is where people believe that the only real objects in the world were those that the 5 senses could perceive. Now, today, when you think about Epicurean, it means a person that's devoted to pursuing human pleasures, especially the enjoyment of good food. But Epicureans believed, okay, there are gods, but the gods don't really care about humans. They're not really all that concerned about human life. Next is sculpture, capital letter D. In the Hellenistic world, sculpting was, and in the Greek world, sculpting was something that was very important. There's one famous work of art in this time period. It's called the Colossus of Rhodes. This is a bronze statue that stood more than 100 feet high, and it is known also as one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. It was built to commemorate the defense of the island of Rhodes from an invasion, and the statue was of Helios, which was the Greek sun god or god of the sun. In 225 BC, unfortunately, an earthquake destroyed the Colossus, and the people of Rhodes, because of the other damage that the earthquake did, they took the excess bronze and sold it to rebuild some of their major cities and other elements. By 150 BC, the Hellenistic world was in decline, while the new major city, Rome, was growing in power and strength. This ends chapter 5. We'll take a look at Rome in the 5 sections of chapter 6. But first, I'll show you what we think the Colossus of Rhodes looked like. It's written that the Colossus straddled the harbor at Rhodes, and any ships coming in or out of the port city had to go underneath the legs. So this is all made of bronze, and some folks say there was a spear that helped balance the statue out. Some folks say there was a cape like this that landed into the ground elsewhere that helped balance it out. But nonetheless, this is believed to have been a real site, and there is still some evidence today of these block and brick-like structures where the feet once were intertwined. So this is, from all historical accounts and documents, this is what we think it may have looked like. Thank you.